Have you ever heard scratching on your walls in the dead of night? What if I told you it wasn't just scratching? What if I told you the message left behind was written in blood? This is the story of the night I played with something I should have never touched, a homemade Ouija board, a night that ended with a message on the wall that still haunts me because it told me the spirit never left. It was my father's idea. I was just a teenager, curious, reckless, and way too drawn to the idea of contacting the other side. He told me that when he was younger, he and his best friend once built their own Ouija board: cardboard, marker, a shot glass for the planchette. That night, he said, changed everything. And when I asked him to tell me what happened, his voice lowered, his eyes shifted, and for a long moment he didn't answer. Finally, he said, "Do you really want to know? Because once I tell you, you'll never look at your house or your own walls the same way again." Of course, I wanted to know. And so he told me. He and his friend had been hanging out in the basement one night. Nothing special, just music, soda, and the thrill of being unsupervised. They found an old article about Ouija boards in a magazine and thought, why not make one ourselves? They tore a piece of cardboard from a box, wrote out the letters, numbers, YES, NO, and GOODBYE. Then they flipped over a shot glass, placing their fingertips lightly on top. At first it was a joke. They laughed as they asked, "Is anyone here with us?" The glass didn't move. They tried again. "Spirit, if you're here, give us a sign." And then the glass shifted. My dad swore they both thought the other was pushing it. But when they locked eyes, they realized it wasn't either of them. The glass slid to yes. The air in the basement suddenly felt colder. The boys started asking questions, silly ones at first. "What's your name? How did you die?" But the answers got stranger. The spirit claimed to be someone who had lived on the land long before houses were built. Someone angry, someone who never left. My dad told me that the more they asked, the more the glass moved on its own, faster and faster, almost like it couldn't wait to spell out the next word. Then his friend made a mistake. He asked, "How long are you going to stay?" The glass spelled forever. The basement light flickered. Both of them froze. After 2 hours of this, they decided they'd had enough. My dad said his hands were shaking, his throat dry, and every hair on his arm stood up straight. They tried to say goodbye. They slid the glass toward the goodbye on the board, but it wouldn't move. Instead, the glass jerked back to no. They both laughed nervously, pretending it was still just a game. But when they tried again, the planchette scraped harder against the cardboard, resisting their push. Finally, my dad's friend said out loud, "We're done. You need to leave." And that's when they heard it. A sound against the basement wall. Slow, deliberate. Scratch, scratch, scratch. My dad swore his heart nearly stopped. He looked toward the wall, but the room was dim, the only light coming from a single lamp buzzing above them. The scratching grew louder, longer. Scratch. Then his friend gasped, pointing. There, on the far wall of the basement, dark red letters began to appear, like invisible fingers were writing, carving, painting. And as they both watched, trembling, the words became clear. "I won't go anywhere. I'm staying right here with you." It wasn't marker. It wasn't paint. It was blood. Thick. Dripping. The smell of iron filled the room. They screamed. They bolted up the stairs, leaving the board behind. My dad told me they refused to go back into that basement for days. His parents thought they were being dramatic, but when his father finally went down to check, the words were still there. Dried, darkened, but unmistakable. The wall had to be scrubbed with bleach, repainted, and even then, faint streaks always seemed to bleed through the new coat. The Ouija board? They burned it in the backyard. But my dad said when it turned to ash, they could swear they heard laughter. For weeks they heard whispers in the house. Doors slammed at night. Objects fell without reason. His friend even swore he saw a figure standing at the foot of his bed, a tall, shadowy man with no face. As my dad finished telling me this, he leaned in closer and whispered, "You think I'm making this up?" Look in the basement. Look behind the shelves. I thought he was just trying to scare me, but curiosity got the best of me. Later that night, I crept down into the basement with a flashlight. I moved aside some old wooden shelves against the far wall, and there, faded but still visible, I saw it, the same message. "I won't go anywhere. I am staying right here with you." The letters were dull brown now, almost lost against the cracked paint. But they were there, after all these years, and the worst part? As I stood there staring, the air around me grew colder. I swear I heard scratching behind the wall. Scratch, scratch, scratch. So now, whenever people tell me Ouija boards are just a silly game, I smile politely and keep my mouth shut. Because I know the truth. Sometimes when you open a door, it doesn't close. And sometimes when something says it's never leaving, it means it. So now, whenever people tell me Ouija boards are just a silly game, I smile politely and keep my mouth shut. Because I know the truth. Sometimes when you open a door, it doesn't close. And sometimes when something says it's never leaving, it means it. I'm staying right here with you. Do you know what it feels like to watch the person you love become someone else? To hear their laughter twist into something inhuman and realize the thing sitting next to you isn't them anymore? That's what happened the night my boyfriend tried to talk to his grandmother through a Ouija board. It started with the single word, "Mama." And from that moment on, nothing was ever the same. I need to tell you this story the way I lived it, because it still keeps me up at night. It was a rainy Saturday evening. The kind of night where the world feels heavy and trapped, like the storm outside is pressing against your windows. My boyfriend, let's call him Daniel, had a couple of friends over. They'd been drinking soda, joking around, bored out of their minds. Then one of them pulled out a Ouija board. I groaned. I've always hated those things. But Daniel's face changed the second he saw it. He smiled, nostalgic, almost emotional. "My grandma used to believe in this stuff," he said softly. "She always called me her little man. Maybe we can talk to her." I wanted to tell him no, but the storm outside was loud, and the laughter of his friends drowned out my hesitation. Against my better judgment, I sat down with them. We lit a few candles, turned off the lights, and placed our fingers on the planchette. The room felt colder almost immediately, but I tried to tell myself it was just my imagination. One of his friends smirked. "Is anyone here with us?" At first, nothing happened. Silence, the faint creak of the house shifting. Then, suddenly, the planchette jerked forward, scraping against the board. We all gasped. It began to move, fast, almost eager. It spelled out letters in quick succession. A, M, A. "Mama," Daniel whispered. His voice cracked. My stomach tightened. Something about the way the word appeared felt wrong. Too fast, too desperate. But Daniel leaned forward, tears glistening in his eyes. "Grandma? Is that you?" The planchette slid to yes. For a moment, the room filled with warmth. Daniel smiled, and I almost felt relief for him. But then it changed. We asked simple questions. "Are you happy? Do you miss him?" And the board answered quickly, too quickly, like it already knew what we were going to say. Daniel laughed softly, but it wasn't the laugh I knew. It was sharp, cracked, like something jagged had gotten lodged in his throat. I put my hand on his arm. "Are you okay?" He turned to me, still laughing, and for just a second his eyes didn't look like his eyes. They looked darker, like the pupils had swallowed the color whole. The planchette suddenly darted, dragging our fingers with it. Over and over it spelled, "Mama, Mama, Mama." The candles flickered violently. One blew out on its own. I pulled my hands away. "That's enough. We need to stop, but Daniel's hands stayed on the board. His friends glanced nervously at each other, no longer amused, and then Daniel whispered in a voice that was not his, "She's not my grandma." After that night, things got worse. Daniel laughed at strange moments while washing dishes in the middle of the night, even during conversations, but it wasn't his laugh. It was that same twisted, hollow sound. He stopped eating with me, stopped answering texts. His friends avoided him, saying he creeped them out. I tried to confront him one evening. The rain had returned, hammering against the windows like fists. He was sitting in the dark, the Ouija board open in front of him. "Daniel, please," I whispered. "This isn't you." "You need help." He looked up at me slowly, his lips stretched into a grin that was far too wide. And then he whispered in a sing-song voice, "Mama's here." The air in the room dropped 10 degrees. My breath fogged. I felt something brush past my legs, though nothing was there. That night I woke to a sound. Laughter, low, sharp, echoing, coming from the living room. I crept out, heart pounding, and there he was, sitting cross-legged on the floor. The board lay in front of him, the planchette moving on its own. His hands weren't even touching it. Over and over, it spelled the same word. "Mama, mama, mama." Daniel tilted his head back and let out that laugh again, but it grew louder, deeper, until it didn't even sound human. I screamed his name. He turned toward me, and for the first time, I knew the person I loved was gone. His eyes were completely black. I ran. I didn't stop until I was out the door, drenched in rain, begging the night to wake me from the nightmare. I wish I could tell you he got better, that I helped him, that whatever had taken him left. But the truth is, he only got worse. His parents checked him into a hospital. The doctors said his mind had cracked under stress. But I know better, because when I visited him once, just once, he leaned in close, grinning, and whispered the same thing that board had spelled out 100 times. "Mama's here." It's been months since I last saw him. I blocked his number, moved away, tried to bury the memory. But sometimes, late at night, when the storm is raging and the house is quiet, I swear I hear it, that laugh. And once, just once, I woke up to see a single word scratched into the condensation on my window. M-A-M-A. What would you do if a spirit spelled out one simple word? Run. And then the walls around you began to whisper. I didn't run fast enough, and I'll never forget what followed. It was Halloween night in my college dorm. The halls were decorated with fake cobwebs, orange lights, and the faint smell of pumpkin candles. Everyone was in costume, some half drunk, others just laughing too loud. I wasn't planning on staying long. I never liked big crowds, but my roommate dragged me along, promising it would be a chill night. By midnight, the music had died down, and most people were too tired to keep dancing. That's when someone pulled out a Ouija board. I groaned. Seriously? That's so cliché. But of course, half the room rushed over to the circle forming on the floor. Come on, my roommate said, grabbing my arm. It's Halloween. What's the worst that could happen? The lights were dimmed, only a few jack-o'-lanterns glowing in the corners. About 6 of us sat cross-legged in the middle of the common room. We placed our fingers on the planchette. One of the guys asked, half laughing, "Is anyone here with us?" For a long moment, nothing happened. I thought it would just stay that way, but then slowly the planchette began to move. It slid across the board, dragging all of our hands with it. First to Y, then to E, then S. My heart skipped. I pulled my hand away, shaking my head. Someone's pushing it. But everyone swore they weren't. So I put my fingers back, reluctantly. That's when someone asked, "What do you want?" The planchette didn't hesitate. It flew across the board so fast it made the plastic scrape against the wood. R-U-N. Everyone froze. Nobody spoke. The air in the room seemed to grow heavier, like someone had turned off the ventilation. Finally, someone laughed nervously. Okay, who did that? But the look on their faces told me nobody was joking. The jack-o'-lantern flames flickered violently, though no one was near them. Run from what? My roommate whispered. The planchette shot to goodbye. And then everything went silent. Not quiet, silent. Even the distant noise of music and laughter from other dorm rooms had vanished. We sat frozen in the heavy stillness until a sharp bang echoed down the hallway. We all jumped. At first, we thought it was someone messing with us, another student pulling a prank. But then we heard it again, a heavy, deliberate thud, like footsteps slamming into the floor. Slow, measured, getting closer. One of the girls whispered, "Is someone running toward us?" But no one was in the hallway. The sound grew louder. The walls seemed to vibrate with every step. Then suddenly, everything stopped. Dead silence again. We were holding our breath when the common room door creaked open. But there was no one there, just darkness. And then faintly we heard it. Whispers. Dozens of voices, all overlapping, echoing from the hall. Too faint to understand, but too loud to ignore. Panic set in. Someone knocked over a pumpkin trying to stand up, sending wax spilling onto the carpet. "Let's get out of here," I hissed. But when we tried to leave, the hallway felt wrong. The lights above flickered, buzzing, and the whispers grew louder. We ran anyway. Our footsteps pounded against the linoleum floor, but the whispers followed us, curling around our ears, muttering our names. At one point, I swore I felt something cold grab my wrist. I screamed, yanking away, but no one was there. We reached the stairwell, but the sound was waiting for us there too. This time it wasn't whispers. It was laughter, low, hollow, like it was coming from the walls themselves. We bolted, scattering in different directions, desperate to find safety. When I finally reached my dorm room, I slammed the door shut, locked it, and sat against it, shaking. The whispers stopped. The laughter stopped. Everything was quiet again. I thought maybe I'd imagined it, that the fear had made me hear things. But then my roommate stumbled in minutes later, pale and trembling. He looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. "You heard it too, right?" he whispered. I nodded, unable to speak. Neither of us slept that night. The next morning, we avoided talking about it. Nobody wanted to admit what had happened. But as I left for class, I glanced at the bulletin board in the hallway, and there, scratched deep into the cork, were 3 letters. R-U-N. I never touched a Ouija board again. But sometimes late at night, when the dorm is quiet, I swear I still hear them. Those whispers waiting in the halls.